Okay, so the only part of your quiz that is no calculator is going to be the quadratic formula. Okay, and yep, so you're going to have a calculator for this part. Everything else you'll have a calculator for. And you have to make sure that you're showing all of your work for credit. It does remind you that everything should be in simplest form. And that means there are no perfect squares underneath the radicals. And that means you're going to simplify all fractions. Okay, if possible. All right, so the quadratic formula is x equals the opposite of b plus or minus b squared minus 4ac divided by 2a. So for part A, you have a, b, c. So x is the opposite of 2 plus or minus 2 squared, or negative 2 squared, which is 4, minus 4ac, all divided by 2a. So underneath the radical, I have 4 times 2, which is 8, 8 times 2, 8 times 3 is 24. So I have 4 minus 24. I usually just put that on top so I don't have to keep writing everything out. And then if you have a negative, that's when you have to bring in the I. So this is 2 plus or minus I root 20. We're going to divide each of these by 4. You can simplify this right away. This we're going to have to look at because 20 has a perfect square in it. Okay, how can you rewrite the square root of 20? Root 4 times root 5. Okay, so that's going to be 1/2 plus or minus. The square root of 4 is 2, so it's 2I root 5 divided by 4. You also need to check on the outside of the radical. So again, 2 over 4 reduces to 1/2. The way that you would write that is 1/2 plus or minus I root 5 divided by 2. Okay, and then if you kept this as 1, I wouldn't mark that wrong, but anytime you have the I in there, you should write it in A plus BI form. Okay, so make sure that you keep that in mind. Okay. Yes, just don't accidentally put it underneath. And then the I can either go on the side here, or it can go in front. A lot of times you'll see it in front just so people don't put it underneath that radical. All right, let's see how B went. So it's the opposite of B, so 8 plus or minus B squared is 64 minus 4AC, all divided by 2A. Okay, so then here you had 64. This is going to be a minus. You have 12 times 5, which is 60. So 8 plus or minus the square root of 4 divided by 6. What is the square root of 4? 2. So if it's a whole number, then you can write this as 8 plus 2 divided by 6 and 8 minus 2 divided by 6. Okay, so 10 over 6 reduces to 5/3. Make sure you reduce. Okay, 6 over 6 also reduces to 1. Okay, so it's 5/3 or 1. Okay, if you have a perfect square, you are going to have to write out the numbers there. Okay, for C, I let you use a calculator on that because you had 67, which is a little bit bigger. So the opposite of B plus or minus B squared minus 4AC divided by 2A.
Switch the A and C.
Oh, no, I wouldn't. And then when you square 16, you get 256. I let you use your calculator for that one. And then 4 times 67 would be 268. really, in terms of what should you be able to do without a calculator, from here forward, we should be able to do that. So we have negative 16 plus or minus negative 12 is underneath, divided by 2. Do not simplify something that's under a radical and something that is not under a radical. Instead, we're going to simplify 12. So if it's negative, you're going to bring the I in it. And if it's 12, are you guys pretty good at just jumping to what the simplification is? Because what's the perfect square in 12? What did you say? Yeah, 4 is the perfect square, so it would be 2 5 root 3 divided by 2. Okay, and then we just have to keep simplifying. So negative 16 divided by 2 is negative 8. And then 2i divided by 2, those can cancel. So you get I root 3. Okay, again, I would put the I in front there just so that you don't accidentally put it underneath. I would take off if it was underneath, but not if it was by the side, okay? All right, and then the last one, you had 2 negatives underneath that multiply to a positive. So it's the opposite of b, plus or minus b squared minus 4ac. So you had a negative times a negative here. Whenever you are multiplying a negative by a negative, it is going to turn into a plus. So if you're multiplying 4 times 18, just do 4 times 10, which you know is 40. 4 times 8, which you know is 32. Okay, so that would be 72. So underneath the radical is 4 plus 72. Okay, 76. When you are trying to find the perfect squares for something like 76, where you're not necessarily going to know what the perfect square is right away, that's when we bring out our factor tree. So for 76, if I break that down, I know 2 goes in there how many times? 38. 2 goes into 38 19 times, and if there's a pair, that comes out. So it's negative 2 plus or minus 2 root 19, and then I like to write both of them divided by 2. That helps me remember that I have to apply this to both. So this is negative 1 plus or minus, those cancel as well, root 19. Okay, so we definitely need to know how to simplify in terms of radicals and fractions for that set. If you have not done your 3-6 homework, I do recommend looking at some of those practice problems as a way for you to double check to make sure that you can get those right. Okay? All right. So Lauren shoots a basketball from 6 feet above the ground. The ball's height in feet can be modeled by this given equation, where t is the time in seconds after the ball is shot. And then it says at what time, so what t value does the ball hit the ground if she shoots an air ball? Oh no, Lauren. Use the quadratic formula to solve. So we're going to set up the opposite of b plus or minus b squared. Oops, I was going to write without the numbers. So b squared would be 24 squared minus 4ac. And then one thing I always assess is if this is going to turn into a positive, you will have your calculator, so you can use that to help you as well. So underneath the radical, I'll find what that is. 24 squared, okay, and then we can do minus 4 times negative 16 times 6, okay, and that will give you your value of 960. So it's negative 24 plus or minus the square root of 960 over negative 32. Okay, it tells you to use the quadratic formula to solve. If it tells you that, I need to see the work. Okay, and in terms of the work, this is what you need to show me. Okay, you're plug in, you're simplified, and then you're either going to do the positive or the negative. And I'm okay if you just do like the plus and the minus here and then find it with your calculator. So we have negative 24, and if you're putting this all in at one time, don't forget the parentheses. You can put it in 2 separate steps if you think you are going to forget those, okay? So one of them is going to produce a negative answer, but we know the time can't be negative, so we're not going to accept that one. Okay, and then we're going to find the negative, which is 1.72. Okay, so your answer, this did not say what to round to, so you're either going to put 1.72 seconds or 1.7 seconds, whichever one you chose is going to be fine. Okay, on your test it will likely tell you what to round to. And so if you want to use a highlighter for some of these story problems, you are welcome to do that for your test. All right, now number 3 is going to tie directly to what you guys had to do on the back. So it says name all 4 types of discriminant values. Okay, and then the number and type of zeros they have, and draw a possible graph for each. Okay, so there were several things that we had to look at there. So if it's positive, a positive and a perfect square, okay, then you have 2 real rational zeros. If it is positive and not a perfect square, what's the difference? Yes, 2 real irrational. So they're not rational if it's not a perfect square. And you can say zeros or roots, that doesn't matter. And then we had to draw a graph. Okay, so your graph just needs to go through the x-axis twice. All right, and then the other type is if the discriminant was 0. If it's equal to 0, then you have 1 real rational zero. Okay, and if it is 1, 0, that means your vertex is on the x-axis. So there's a possible graph. And then if it's a negative, how many zeros do you have? More. 2. So it either is going to have 2 or 1. They all have 2 except for 0, but these are not going to be real. They are complex. Okay, and 2 complex zeros means that they are imaginary, and our graph for that, it cannot cross the x-axis. Okay, so it can look like this. Okay, that would be a possible graph. Okay, we're going to use that to help us answer the next question.